Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting's back in session, and we do thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
And if you would continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd next like to call Hal Simoff.
Good evening.
Sign in, sir, please. Okay, very good. State your name for the record.
Hal Simoff,
Could you spell your last name? Thank you.
Simoff.
Thank you.
Hal, would you identify your employment currently at this point?
I'm employed by the firm of Simoff Engineering Associates in Madison, New Jersey. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Pennsylvania. I'm a fellow with the Institute of Transportation Engineers. I've been an adjunct professor of civil engineering at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and I've been qualified throughout the area of Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey as a professional engineer with a focus in traffic engineering.
And you're also licensed in other states as well as Pennsylvania?
New York, New Jersey, and Delaware.
And for how long have you been a traffic engineer?
Oh, I hate to say.
It's okay. Say it.
Your secret's safe with us.
Since I've been licensed since 1979, I believe.
I was 5.
That's what I'm saying.
I would move to have the witness qualified as an expert traffic engineer. Are there any objections?
No, go ahead.
I would also like to offer into the record a copy of Mr. Simoff's CV, and I will mark that as Exhibit A13. That's where I left off. Hal, have you been contacted by Interstate Outdoor Advertising to present testimony here this evening?
Yes, I have.
And would you explain to the board or to council the nature of that engagement and the work you were asked to perform?
Yes, I was asked to perform an analysis of the traffic safety of the proposed billboards, and that included a literature review, site inspection, and some plotting of the visibility of the proposed signs.
And when you say the traffic safety, is that the traffic safety of the traveling public on Interstate 376?
Yes.
Okay. Could you identify what literature that you reviewed?
Yes, well, I'd just like to bring to the board's attention a recent study that was done by the Federal Highway Administration, because there's always been some issues, and everybody raises the issue of whether billboards are safe or have an effect on traffic safety. And in 2012, the U.S. Federal Highway Administration introduced or published a study entitled Driver Visual Behavior in the Presence of Commercial Electronic Variable Message Signs. A mouthful, but basically what it did is there's new technology that's been developed in the last few years where they mount cameras within a car and they can tell where the driver looks out the window, and they can monitor eye glances. So what they did is they monitored eye glances in the location of static billboards, no billboards, and digital billboards. And the federal government published this report in 2012. It came out last year because it took a year of peer review. It's one of the few studies that have been published that is peer review, because it's an issue that everybody's concerned about. And the findings of that study indicate that it was between 0.38 seconds and 0.35 seconds, 34 seconds, approximately a third of a second is what the glances of billboards are, both static and digital. And then the study goes on to say, in the executive summary, it says, the present data suggests that drivers in this study directed the majority of their visual attention to the areas of the roadway that were relevant to the task at hand. Furthermore, it is possible and likely that in the time that the drivers looked away from the forward roadway, They may have elected to glance at other objects in the surrounding environment that were not relevant to the driving task. When billboards were present, the drivers in this study sometimes looked at them, but not that overall attention to the forward roadway was decreased. What that means is, and the simple way of saying it is, and what I'll get to in my next section of this discussion, is that if you take your eye off the road, or off the forward road, there's been some studies that say that anything more than 2 seconds off the forward road becomes a traffic hazard. So if you're, and the study was originally, the 2-second study was originally drafted to evaluate the impacts of cell phones and texting, because they said, you know, how long do you have to look down at your phone before you become a traffic hazard? And they determined that, looking down off the forward road for more than 2 seconds is a problem. This latest federal study says it's about 1/3 of a second that you're looking at billboards. So, you know, we're clearly not in that realm of becoming a traffic hazard, and this report states that. But what also is that when the driver is doing the driving chore, they don't just look at they don't have blinkers on. They're looking at the buildings, they're looking at the trees, they're looking at they're taking eye glances, and that is reinforced by this study that says that these eye glances are about 1/3 of a second at different locations. So what we did, and I guess now it comes to the next set of,
You put them in the order that you want.
well, they're labeled. Here's copies. No. These are-
Your copies.
I've prepared,
You want to center that a little bit better there, sir?
Let's see, let me get this one.
there are 5 aerial photos.
I'm handing you Exhibit A14. Would you identify that?
So what I did is, there's a concept within the traffic engineering profession, is that your viewing angle is about 20 degrees. So what I did is I plotted the 20-degree viewing angle, or call it the cone of vision of 20 degrees, and then saw how long it took, or how long it was available based on the geometry of the road to see this billboard. At 55 miles an hour is about 80, a little more than 80 feet per second. So the first one is, A14 is a depiction of the railroad site, and I'm going from west to east. So proposed sign, I call proposed sign 1. It shows about 10 seconds viewing from the eastbound, and about 8.4 seconds, 8.4, if I can, the viewing from going westbound is 8.4 seconds, the viewing going eastbound is 10 seconds, so when we put those factors into the fact that these eye glances are 0.3 seconds, 0.4 seconds, you know, they're not a distraction. You have plenty of time to view the signs. And so what I did that is for each billboard, and
And then I'm going to hand to you Exhibit A15.
A15 shows the 3 signs on the Duquesne property. In the eastbound direction, it's about 8.3 seconds. In the westbound direction, it's about 7.8 seconds. So again, because of the geometry of the roadway, it's my opinion that these are safely designed and will not impact traffic safety. So my analysis is twofold. One is the global, which I looked at the available literature that talks about, in general, traffic safety, and then I looked at site-specific traffic safety. And A16 shows the middle sign on the Duquesne property, where the visibility in the eastbound is 8.2 seconds, and the westbound is 7.5 seconds. And that's consistent with all the, they're all in the range of 7 to 10 seconds, which is plenty of time to view the billboard, not distract you because you're still looking through the front windshield of the car. 17 and 18 talk about the Duquesne, further on the Duquesne site, and then A18 is the visibility of the Smith property, which has 8.5 seconds and 10.3 seconds. And then I have copies to hand out.
Yes, we have copies that we will offer to the court reporter, and these will be put into the record. And I'd also at this time like to offer a copy for the record of the Federal Highway Administration report referred to by the witness, the 2012 report, which I have marked for identification purposes as Exhibit A19.
Okay.
And I might say that this report is recent because it was a year of peer review. So the federal government distributed to state agencies, to other federal agencies, got comments back, looked at the critique of the study, which is novel because most of the studies that are published are not subject to peer review.
Hal, a question, when you talk about the duration of the visibility within the cone of vision, and you've mentioned 8 seconds and so forth, and this is in the driver's eye as the driver is looking out of his windshield.
Correct.
This is not the driver looking to either side, but he is still focused on the driving or the task at hand, and the billboard is there in visual within the cone of vision while he is performing his driving functions?
Yes, this federal study talks about a hierarchy of driving tasks. And what you do is, your first task is to take control of the car, and it talks about the hierarchy, and so that the less important thing is looking at the environment. When the traffic gets high, you focus right in front of you. When the traffic is less dense, you glance, whether you're going to glance at the building, whether you're going to glance at the trees, you're going to scan the environment.
So,
And the study indicates that billboards, you can't stop the scanning, and the scanning is not abnormally long for billboards.
so the alignment of the road and the location of the billboards within the cone of vision of the driver, coupled with the alignment of the road, adds to the safety or at least does not render the billboards as having an adverse impact on traffic safety.
Correct. As I stated, I looked at the global to get the facts from the Federal Highway Administration, then I looked at the site-specific, because you have to combine the two. And my conclusion, and it's clear that there's adequate time to view these billboards, and they're not going to be a traffic safety issue.
And would you state for the record then what your opinion is after your review and study again, so that we have specifically your professional expert opinion with regard to the impact on traffic safety from the proposed advertising billboards?
Put it in one word, none.
I have no further questions of the witness. Any questions of counsel we would be happy to respond to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Next and final witness will be Robert Newell.
Oh, he's coming up here. Can you spell his last name?
Newell.
Good evening.
Sign in, state your name for the record, sir.
Robert Newell, Newell.
That was right. Robert, would you again identify yourself and your address and your current employment?
My name is Robert Newell. I am principal of Robert Newell Lighting Design. We're lighting consultants located in Westfield, New Jersey. I've had my practice for 30 years this year, and we focus on architectural lighting and lighting expert witness services. We've serviced all types of clients, from residential to large commercial, corporate, healthcare. And our expert witness services, we do planning boards, applications, Board of Adjustment applications, a lot of personal injury, and billboard applications.
How long have you been doing the lighting design work, Robert?
I've had my own business 30 years, and 6 years prior to that when I started.
And I would like to offer this witness as an expert witness in the lighting design area, and ask that he be accepted for that purpose.
He's so accepted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am going to label and mark as exhibit number A19,
I think it's 20.
20.
Yeah.
am I on 20?
Yes.
Where did I lose it? Oh, okay,
19
yes,
is study.
19.
It's the report.
This will be marked as A20, and this is the CV of Robert Newell that I would like to offer into the record.
So be it.
Robert, were you asked by Interstate Outdoor Advertising, the applicant in these proceedings, to do certain work with regard to the applications pending before council?
Yes, I was.
And would you identify what that request was in the scope of your engagement?
I was asked to review the lighting impact of the proposed illuminated signs on the site plan and in the field.
And would you describe for council what it was that you reviewed and considered in the work that you performed in this engagement?
Yes. I received the site plans and a variety of different versions, the overall plan and site-specific plans, to review the location of the double signs in the 5 locations, the single on Smith, the single on the railroad property, and the 3 under Duquesne, to review their location, their aiming angle, and how the illuminated signs face the highway, and more importantly, how they face and affect the residential areas surrounding the locations. I've been to all the sites, the 5 sites, and reviewed their locations and their placement, their heights that are proposed in the plans and sections, and I've been to the adjacent residential sites to look from the closest areas that the residents are near, and review the impacts of those proposed signs in those locations.
Robert, would you also describe for council the type of lighting for both the static and the digital signs that are proposed?
There are 2 types of signs proposed. Static is static. It's a vinyl signs mounted to a board. In this particular case, each static sign will be illuminated by a 100-watt LED of 7,800 lumens mounted to the top of the sign, shining down, aimed towards the sign. There is no off-premises glare. There is no sky glow. There is no negative visual impact from the signs. The fact that the signs are facing down is an advantage to the environment, because no light goes up into the environment, and relative to the 6 static signs, all the signs are below the viewing point of all the residences we looked at, so all the signs are, the fixtures are facing down, already below the residential locations. The 4 digital signs are made up of LEDs in an array that fills the 18-foot by 48-foot sign. LEDs are directional light sources. The signs have a very specific distribution. They don't just put light out on all sides. They have a very narrow distribution. The LED light is focused down the highway in a 70-degree wide cone horizontally, and only a 60-degree cone vertically. So it basically shines horizontal and down. So there's a very, very narrow beam of light that comes out of the LEDs, and they're designed specifically to aim down a roadway, and so there is no spill light. Once you get out of that 70-degree cone, left or right, the sign essentially appears black, kind of like your old projection TVs. You get out of the center of the view and you can't see them anymore.
And the location of all the signs, are there any signs where the lighting is directed directly towards a residential area? Or I believe you had testified that they are all lower than the surrounding residential areas?
Yes, we look very closely at each individual sign and how the V pattern or the location of each sign is placed relative to the highway, which is how they should be placed. They are designed to aim down the highway, as Mr. Simoff's exhibit showed. And those aiming angles have worked out well for the residents because they're showing down the highway and not showing up the hillside. All the residents are on the upper hills, the highway's in a valley, the signs are in the valley. In most applications, some applications, the residents are looking at the back side of the sign, especially on the Smith property. They're looking at the back side of the sign. The Duquesne properties, the apartment units or condo units up the hill and the few residences to the south, they're looking at the signs at such an oblique angle that they really can't see them, and they won't be a very bright source. They wouldn't be anyway because all the light is shining down. They'll never see any individual light fixtures, just some brightness on the sign. But because of their location to these particular signs, they're looking at it quite obliquely, and they won't be a large panel of light. The railroad property is the sign closest to a resident, and those signs are those two signs are located between an existing panel sign across the highway up the hill, and that sign is obliquely aimed down the highway, so the residents at the top of that hill will also be looking at those signs obliquely. So no residential properties are looking directly at a sign at any important angle or straight-on angle.
And does the environment and the topography, mainly the trees and the slope of the land, have an impact on the visibility or the impact of light emitting from this that would have an impact on the residences?
Yes. The signs are varying heights above the roadway because of topographic conditions, hills and valleys. So each sign has a different height above the roadway to accomplish the correct viewpoints down the highway. All of these signs are below the level of all the residents. The residents are all shielded very well by trees, and in our analysis today at the sites, there are no leaves on trees, and all the locations are very dense with wood. Wood trees. It was hard to see some of the sign locations because of the trees. In the summertime, when leaves are on the trees, they won't even know the signs are there because they won't be able to see them.
Robert, as a result of your review and consideration, your site visit, your education and your experience as a lighting design professional, do you have an opinion with regard to the impact of light that would emanate from the proposed signs and the impact that would have on the surrounding residential areas?
Yes, it is my opinion that due to the proposed ordinance, the timing of the light, the static fixtures turn off at midnight, the fact that the digital light fixtures or digital signs are adjustable and coordinate through photocells with the ambient brightness that is in particular time during the day. They're up higher. At night they dim down to 0.3 foot candles above the ambient level. That the signs face away from residential properties, and the fact that there's a lot of screening It is my opinion that these signs will have no negative impact on the residents that live surrounding the area.
You've mentioned the ambient light, and how would you classify, what grade classification of ambient light would you attribute to these?
I would classify this area as what they call an L2 or an E2, which is a low light ambient level. It's residential in nature, it's not urban, and on the other hand, it's not a national park, it's not out in the middle of the fields of some areas that you might find signage. It's a standard classification area for this type of area, and through all the formulas and the designations and the light output studies, it creates, the standard is a 0.3 foot candles above ambient. So when you talk about ambient light levels, you're in the middle of the day, on a sunny day or a cloudy day, you can have foot candle levels in 7, 8, 10,000 foot candles. Signs typically go up to 78 or 8,500 foot candles during the day. At night, as daylight decreases and nighttime comes around, in most cases, in these particular areas, there's virtually no other light. There are some street lights along the highway. The Honeywell property has light distributing out.
Now, you say the Honeywell property, that would be the Smith.
That's a Smith property, I'm sorry. In the evening, you will have some light emulating out the windows. Otherwise, the only other lighting there is car headlights and vehicle headlights. But up in the sky, these signs are framed against the black sky, and a black sky is 0 foot candles, and 0.3 foot candles on top of that is the standard. So there is very little contrast, and that's what people see is contrast, the difference between the bright and the dark.
I have no further questions of this witness, and we'd be happy to respond to any questions council may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to recall Jeff Gerber. I believe that Councilman Harvey had questions with regard to the PennDOT requirements, and he can quickly respond to the issues there. So if
Yes.
I may, I'd like to recall, and Jeff, I would remind you, you're still under oath.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Well, I was just asking what PennDOT standards are for putting things like this along the highway.
Sure. PennDOT allows a maximum size sign of 1,200 square feet. We're going to be down at 672 square feet. They require a minimum of 500-foot spacing along signs along the same side of the roadway. We will meet that requirement. With respect to digital, they allow changing of digital sign faces every 5 seconds. We'll be doing it every 8 seconds. Those are the main requirements.
PennDOT has standards for this stuff, and you're going to exceed that.
Yes, in many cases, and we have to have a PennDOT permit to operate, and if we don't follow those standards, they will revoke our permit and won't be able to operate the signs. I just want to make one clarification. Mr. Newell, I think he may have misspoke. He said there was one 100-watt LED light fixture per static sign. There'll be 3 spaced along the top of the sign, not one. Just wanted to clarify that. for
And
the
all
record.
3 of those will be directed down.
Per the proposed ordinance, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
That is the end of our testimony.
Okay, let's make sure we have what are our exhibits?
The exhibits go through A1 through A20.
Okay.
I would move at this time that all exhibits be accepted into the record.
Okay, we'll admit all A1 through 20.
Thank you. And I will leave the copy, or the originals here, and before I leave, I will make sure that the court reporter has a full set of all exhibits.
I need like 14 through 9, or 20, 14 through 20.
Are those the pictures?
These are the pictures.
No, 14 through 20.
Okay.
They're
No,
photos.
14 through 20 goes through the last one, which
Okay.
was Robert Newell's CV.
Okay, but everything's there.
Everything is here.
When I say everything's there, it's on the table. At
It is on the
podium.
table, and what I am going to do, I think we have only one copy. I'm going to leave the marked copy and remove the other copies that I have here behind it, but this is the only,
Okay,
this is the only one that was really
so
testified
it's
to.
not duplicative, okay.
Yeah, that's it, right. So this is A1. Where would council prefer that?
Let's just leave them right there.
Just leave them right there. Okay.
Do you have anything else?
Nothing further by way of direct at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, are we going to continue now? Because I thought you wanted to address those attorneys.
No,
In this
continue.
matter. Continue, okay. All right, with that, we'll begin. Is there anybody here that wants to speak besides the applicant and its designees? Is there anybody here that wants to speak in favor of this project? Seeing none, we'll commence with the individuals who may want to speak against the project. I want to first address those individuals who are actually residents of Monroeville. So if you intend to speak on this and you're a resident of Monroeville, you should do so now. That's you.
Yes, I am a resident of Monroeville, guaranteed.
Please sign in and state your name for the
I
record.
have signed in.
Oh, yeah, you did.
On the other
Sorry.
sheet there.
Sign that sheet.
This one too?
Thank
Sure. Janice Olszewski, Asbury Court, Monroeville.
Thank you.
Sure. I've listened to, expert testimony this evening, and I appreciate that, and a summary overlay from Mr. Shufo. I have a couple concerns and questions also. Here in Monroeville, we do have a comprehensive plan. In our comprehensive plan, we do strive over more recent years for specific corridors to be designated for parks, open space, greenways, environmental issues, and those areas issued for transient-oriented developments. And that in there, it also says that we have to consider consistency with land development projects and the adjoining properties in any area being developed. So we are looking at 3 locations which are zoned commercial and industrial. Adjoining these locations are predominantly conservation and residential. Wards 3, 5, 6, and 7 border these specific areas, and these areas are the ones that are most impacted, I would believe, than other portions of the community. In driving from Pittsburgh today into Pittsburgh to work and back home, looking on the Parkway and looking up at the landscape areas, I was able to visually see all the residential houses. There were some that were obstructed by the heavy timberland area and the topography, but most of the houses were quite visible. And it's difficult to understand how these people could not be seeing these signs along the roads. Safety is a major issue, and I think that's of our greatest concern. One thing that came before me is when I found the small article in the papers designating that they were going to have a meeting on these billboards, it was kind of confusing to see that the sign company actually designed the amendment to our ordinance and are requesting you, our council, and representatives to make these amendments on their behalf. It appears that most of these people are from New Jersey. They're not taxpayers here in Pennsylvania, let alone the municipality or Allegheny County. That was one question I had, or one concern I had. The issues of the signs, I was hearing initially they said that there were going to be 2 signs on Smith property, then I'm hearing 1 sign. And just as a clarification, and 3 on Duquesne Light and 2 on the railroad. So are there 1 or 2 on Smith?
There's one sign structure on the Smith property, double-faced.
Okay.
There's 3 on the Duquesne Light, double-faced, and 1 on the Union Railroad property.
1 on Union Road, okay. Thank you. Also, these signs are to be spaced a minimum of 500 feet apart. We're looking at an area of 7,000 lineal feet along the Parkway that they're looking to request this overlay district. That being the case, if this were permitted, then we could actually see as many as 14 signs along that stretch on each side of the highway.
Can I clarify that for you?
Yes, please.
Each specific property is designated as the overlay. It's not the entire corridor.
But there's 7,000 lineal feet in those,
No.
as a total of those areas?
It's property specific. The overlay pertains to the
Yes.
Smith property.
And how much total frontage between the
Okay.
three parcels?
How much total frontage
Lineal
between
frontage.
between the...
Yes, totaling the three parcels.
That I don't know. I don't know if the applicant could...
I can just say that
Sure.
You have to come up to the mic, sir.
Sorry. Just to answer your question, the proposed ordinance only allows for these 5 signs and no more.
Yes, but you could request more signs.
Not without
Okay,
a new
hold on,
ordinance
hold on.
overlay to do that.
What we're not going to do is go back and forth.
Okay, I just
Okay.
want
This
to make
is
it
your
clear.
opportunity, I got you, you made your statement. This is your opportunity to offer testimony,
Okay.
and that's what I want you to do.
Another concern I have is, when they spoke of the Smith property, there was an indication initially that, Mark had indicated that it would be 80 feet from the base height of the road, 376. There's an elevation on the Smith property, as well as the other properties, of it being 10 to 15 feet minimum above the grade of the road. And then if we're going to impose this 80-foot sign on top of that, are we looking at 90 feet in the, high in the sky?
No.
That was the question.
Actually, that structure, the way they stated, it would be 80 feet from the elevation of the roadway. So actually, that structure's only going to be 65 feet in the air.
That's what we need the clarification. If you looked at the photograph of the building, it's at well above the building. And if you're looking at, to give you some perspective of a 14
Let me
or
just pause
12.
you for a second. I want you to, and when I say you, the applicant, to take some notes here, because when she's finished, and if she has questions, I'm going to ask you to address them. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. When you're looking at a sign, 12, what is it, 14 by 48, if you look at the wall behind you, those signs are larger than that wall behind you, to give you some perspective to the size of these signs. And that's what we're looking at. When we talked about these single-pole signs, I didn't hear any reference to whether they are of a flag-style design or a unipole design, with the design of the pole being in the center. If so, when you look at these setbacks, are you talking that the face of these signs have to be within that setback? Because we don't want them, of course, hanging out into the right-of-way. So I'm assuming that the faces of the signs would have to be set back, which would then put the pole of the sign further back on the property.
Correct. The outside edge of that sign paralleling 376 will have to be 10 feet back from the property line.
The area around these signs, when these signs are established, some of the areas, especially down on the Duquesne Light and the Union Railroad properties, there is a lot of vegetation around there. How much area around these signs will need to be clear-cut in order for them to be visual?
It's something that their engineer would have to answer.
Okay. Also, they'd indicated that the glances per second, as we're looking at like 1/3 of a second glance and so on, these signs change the message every 6 seconds. So,
8.
pardon?
He said 8 seconds. Every 8 seconds.
I thought it was 6, but 6 or 8, either. I think Mark said
Again.
6, too.
Let the applicant respond. You know, it's their job to respond to these.
I think it said 8 messages per minute, and it could change every 6 seconds, is,
Okay.
whatever.
We're not gonna do that,
Regardless.
okay?
If that sign,
ahead.
if you were glancing at that sign and that you were at the opportune time where it's changing the message, you're not going to look at it just for 1/3 of a second. It may catch your eye again, flipping the message. You're going to look at it. So who can say how many times you will actually be looking at that sign driving down there? And if you have more than 1 or 2 or 3 signs consecutively, you're glancing there more frequently. So I'm not sure about, how much distraction there really would be. It appears that it may be more than just that simple amount. These signs that are being proposed are actually 5 times larger, almost 5 times larger than what we permit today. It's not that in Monroeville we don't permit billboards. We do permit billboards. and we welcome them. Where I live, to go 1 block on 22, you pass 5 billboards, 5 double-faced billboards within a block. So it's not that we don't permit them, we just have restrictions or limitations on the types of signs for the protection and safety of our community, and also we have the distinctive pleasure of being one of the gateways to Pittsburgh. Do we really want to, again, destroy some of the beautiful scenery and landscape that we have going into the city? Can we control content of these signs? They're saying that content is monitored. However, once we grant them the permission to erect these signs, we really have no control. This is evidenced just lately as last night on Channel 2 CBS News, KDKA, there's a group of people that live in West Katanning that have billboards across from their houses that are currently being impaired by these signs, adversely affected by these signs. And they've asked them to dim the glare of these signs, and I heard that they will dim the glare at nighttime. Another concern I have is, yes, the lighting is designed in many ways to help prevent as much adverse glare as possible. However, when there is darkness, these signs do appear much brighter than they are, and they said that they would control them, go down to 0.3 candles and so on. But if you're driving currently on William Penn Highway in Monroeville by the Johnette Plaza, look at that sign and sometimes how distracting it is. As far as emergency signage, along the Parkway, we already have emergency signage that's been installed by PennDOT, about 1.5 miles down the road from the Duquesne Light property. There is a sign there that talks about emergency and traffic and so on. So we do have that, and we've paid for that with our tax dollars, through the state. As far as looking at these sign changes, these face changes, as you're driving down the Parkway and you keep seeing all these changes, that could you could watch almost a movie off some of it. But anyhow, the other thing is the Highway Beautification Act of 1965. In 1972, Pennsylvania entered an agreement, and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania entered into an agreement that they would meet compliances with FHWA and so on. And most of the items that were addressed tonight were correct. However, there was one item that I saw that was not addressed, and that's the maximum height of a billboard. And in the Commonwealth's agreement with FHWA, it says that there should be a maximum of 30 feet high. Here we're asking, ours currently says 24 feet. They're asking for 80 feet high. Again, almost 4 times as high as what we permit them now. And if we're going to, in any way, I would caution council to give all consideration to in any way that we may in any way not comply with the state agreement for FHWA, because we do get fuel taxes and so on. We benefit from them, and we don't want to jeopardize losing any of those benefits to our community. The notices, the other thing I ask is, if you all lived on one of the streets that overlooked, and I had a map that showed all the housing areas that actually overlooked the Parkway, and I put in orange all of the residential areas where I was able to see the houses today.
You can slide that up just a little bit, please.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I was able to see all the houses marked in orange there, the streets that were marked in orange. Those were all visible from the highway today, going in and coming out of the city. The first circle there is the Smith property. A lot of Ward 7 looks over that, and there are numerous streets that you can see down onto there. These, again, are Ward 6 and 7. and part of 3 on the far end can see the A.O. Smith area too. There are a lot of residents there. These are the people that elected you, and these are the people that you have to be concerned about. And I would, definitely consider those things. The size of the signs, again, is a very big concern. The changing of the illumination of the signs, and they did say that the electronic signs would remain on 24 hours a day. Our current zoning says that at midnight they must be darkened. And again, that's another concern. And this is the one that's probably seen most at night, and would, in bad weather or foggy weather, does give you some distraction. Driving on the highways as I do so much, I really truly believe that, because it is distracting to me and to many others. Currently, there are over 700 municipalities that actually do prohibit new construction billboards. And there are numerous states, Connecticut, Texas, New Hampshire, Vermont, California, Hawaii, Maine, that prohibit billboards. Colorado has limited prohibition on billboards. So it's not that we in Monroeville are prohibiting them, as many states do, but we're asking to please consider the residents and the safety of the community. Thank you.
Oh, what we're going to do here is hear from everybody, then we're going to give you a chance to respond.
I just have a procedural question.
Shoot.
Has the witness...
You have to come up to the mic.
Has the witness offered any exhibits for the record?
Not yet.
Do you intend to offer your map as an exhibit?
Yes, I will.
Okay. So we'll make that Olszewski 01.
01. Thank you.
And council prefers that we respond to questions
At the end of everybody.
after everybody.
Any other resident?
I'm on your list up there. I don't need to sign it again.
If you would,
I think she
if
may
you would
want you.
please sign in and state your name, sir.
My name, I can sign it, then I got to put my glasses on.
I understand that.
Take your time.
My name's Ezra Lippincott,
Want to spell that?
Lippincott.
And you're a resident of Monroeville?
Right. First, I'd like to start with a question. What does Monroeville get out of approving this ordinance? Anything? Do we get taxes out of this? Mr. Mayor, can you answer that?
Okay, well, this isn't that kind of a proceeding. This proceeding is a proceeding where you to give public input.
Okay,
It's a
well,
conditional use application where if you want to comment on these particular uses that are being proposed, you can.
okay.
The time for questions is not tonight,
Okay.
okay? Again, we're following what the process is under the municipality's planning code.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to address the traffic safety issue. And we heard from a traffic safety expert. I'm not a traffic safety expert. I have no training in traffic safety.
So
But
you're
I
not
did-
qualified to offer
I'm not
any
qualified
opinion. Okay.
to make any assessments on
All
traffic
right.
safety. However, I think everyone will agree with me that billboards are there to attract attention. You all agree with that? They're there, otherwise, why have them there? They're there to sell you something. So that's the purpose of billboards. So they do distract you from your driving to some extent. Now, I can quote 2 examples where billboards have definitely caused accidents. The first one I'd like to tell you about was over 50 years ago in Boston. There was a billboard at a major intersection which had 2 gears going around, presumably one driving the other. But the different thing about this gears was, and they were going around, so it was a motorized billboard. This was way before digital billboards. Motorized billboard, and these gears were square. So how do two gears turn together when they're square? Well, you would stop and think about that when you're at this intersection. And that caused enough accidents that they made the company take that billboard down. A more recent example of accidents caused by a billboard I just saw in the last week or so. In Russia, they had these trucks. Maybe some of you saw this on the internet. They had these trucks, billboard trucks, driving around with, with a big billboard on the side of the truck. And on this particular company was trying to sell their billboard space, and they put a topless woman picture on these trucks. And that attracted so much attention that the police attributed 500 accidents to these trucks driving around in Russia with the picture of a topless woman. Now, I'm not saying these billboards are going to be anything like that, but I just say there is evidence that if billboards are too attractive, they cause accidents. Our traffic engineer quoted the government study, which was quite controversial. He didn't tell you why it took a whole year for the peer review to be completed. And that's because it was a controversial study, because the results that he quoted, and he only quoted, I think, an average time of distraction. And I'm glad he talked about, the modern methods that you can measure things, because it's very difficult to measure accidents due to billboards because you just don't have time to get statistics. So the thing is, you measure how long people are distracted from the road, and he quoted an average time of about a third of a second. And this study was controversial because it disagreed with a lot of other studies. Now, he stated there aren't any other peer-reviewed studies. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I do know that they did a trial of digital billboards in Sweden, and he didn't mention that study, but they put up these digital billboards on highways near Stockholm, and they did a study with measuring the distraction time, and in this study they found a significant increase in the number of people whose attention span was diverted from the road by 1.6 seconds or more. He said 2 seconds, but the traffic studies I've seen use 1.6 seconds as like a minimum time where distractions are likely to cause accidents. So on the Parkway East, or I-376, the speed limit is 55 miles an hour. In practice, I would say a lot of people go 65 miles an hour. At 65 miles an hour in 1.6 seconds, you travel 152.5 feet. That's more than a half a football field. So if you are distracted by a billboard for 1.6 seconds, you will not come back and look at what's in front of you for half a football field distance. And a lot can happen in 150 feet. The car in front of you, you may be following a safe distance, but the car in front of you may jam on its brakes because there's a deer by the side of the road or an accident or something. All kinds of things can happen. So I think council should consider that maybe the figures quoted by the traffic engineer do not reflect the whole picture on the actual traffic hazards along the Parkway East that the billboards may cause. And even if the billboards only cause one serious accident every 10 years, we'd still have to address that. Our fire department would have to respond, et cetera. So it's increasing the hazard, in my opinion. And I think the billboard people should be asked to provide better data to prove that we're not going to have any increased frequency of accidents. Zero. That's what I think we should have. And just quoting an average distraction time is not good enough, because some people are going to be distracted longer, and that's where the hazard lies. And it's not us that's driving there, it's the guy in the other car. Thank you.
My name is Natalie Sandretto. I'm a Monroeville resident for about 33 years. I will.
Don't touch it. You're not allowed to touch it.
I didn't touch it.
You get yelled at.
Good.
I didn't touch
The
it.
wizard will speak up.
I'm afraid of him.
And that you should be.
We all are.
Comes from the sky.
We're afraid of them, too.
We don't know who he is.
Neither do I. And, you know, I'm not, this is my first time to speaking to the council, so I have a lot of nerves here to deal with, let alone the wizard.
You'll be fine.
So, I wanted to speak to my personal experience, since I'm not an expert in anything except living in Monroeville and driving the Parkway East. And it's something I've been doing, as I said, for more than 33 years. And I commute to town and for all these years, and I commute to the north side now, which is further still. And what I see every evening at the second Monroeville exit, the one at 2248, is a line of traffic. And I understand that we're sitting through the light that controls 2248, and often that traffic is backed up onto the slow lane, the right lane of the Parkway. And while I'm sitting there with my flashers on, I'm looking in my rearview mirror, waiting for the guy who's really has an important call to make, or an important text to send, or is checking his GPS, or is watching the video that his kids are watching, to hit me. I always hope he doesn't, and so far so good. But sooner or later, my good luck is going to run out. And I don't want Mr. Gerber's sign to contribute to my bad luck. It's clear to me that for all the people from New Jersey in this room, this is a very important business arrangement for the guys from New Jersey. I see that they must have a lot to gain because they've got their big guns here. And if I were a more cynical person, I might think that the traffic inspector or the whatever Mr. Simoff is as an expert, that God made that little stretch of the Parkway just for these signs. I can see how the lovely curve of that road and that nice hill would allow drivers to look longer at each of these signs, further distracting themselves. Because when you're looking at what's in front of you, and instead of it being the road, it happens to be the road with a giant sign on it, you're going to keep looking, especially if you think it's going to change. That's why he's in the sign business. When I bought our property with my husband, and he, I think, will be happy to show you where it is on these maps, we wanted to live in this property because of that beautiful curve in the road that we could see from our yard, and because of the trees, and because of the clear line of sight. And it's, for us, it's a western-facing view. And that makes it even more desirable because you get to see a lovely sunset. And despite all of the lighting experts' testimony to the contrary, I don't believe that an oblique angled view of a sign that is larger than the side of my house is not going to obstruct my view of what used to be nice western Pennsylvania terrain, or somehow diminish my property value, for which I have been paying taxes now for more than 33 years. So, without ever dreaming that we could possibly control the content on those signs, without even imagining that these 6 signs are needed for amber alerts or traffic alerts when we've got another sign just like it that we already paid for to have erected about 1.5 miles earlier on the Parkway, without ever thinking that we could control or that the altruism of a sign company is going to really contribute to our community. The people from New Jersey have everything to gain here with these 6 signs and their double-facedness in our neighborhood, and I have everything to lose. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Any other residents of the municipality that want to testify?
I'll get up here since somebody else wants to.
I'm a resident of Monroeville. My name is Robert Serafini. I come to these meetings quite often. I was at the planning meeting last month. I heard these same gentlemen talk, and they must be paid pretty good for all these guys to come up and give testimony. So it comes down to a question of money. Now, the sign company is going to make all the money, and what I look at is when somebody proposes something to me, how does it benefit me? That's what you people have to sign out tonight. How does it benefit Monroeville? There is no benefit to Monroeville whatsoever. I learned at the planning meeting, there is no taxes derived from any of these signs. These people are out of state. There's no money paid to the municipality. So why in the heck would you want to, just screw up the whole countryside with these signs? I do not like the signs. I've been in other states. They distract from the beauty of the ground. And I've been up here many times telling you how I feel about trees and so on and so forth. So when I say ugly signs, I mean ugly signs. I've been in many, many states. Now, like I said, how can you vote on something where you're not going to get any pleasure out of it, or you're not going to get any money out of it? It comes down to those final two things. What are you going to get out of it? Nothing. Thank you.
Sir?
Good evening, John Larkin. I am a Monroeville resident. I've been a resident since '74. I'm in Ward 6, okay? Now, the only thing excuse me, I got a cold and a sore throat, and
You're not alone.
yeah. I've got a piece of paper I brought up, come up off of Google Earth. If you can see this, I live down on Venzel Lane. I live
You want to
across.
maybe center that? It's just off a little bit if you look up on the camera there. There you go.
I live across the highway from the Duquesne Light property. That's where the three signs are going to be put. Now, as far as I can tell, I live on Venzel Lane. There's two houses down there. Venzel Lane is right here. Comes down, there's a little, on my paper, you can't see it on the big screen. There's two houses down here. The first house is here, that's my neighbor, and the second house is here. I was notified by the Monroeville of the two letters. I fall within the 300-foot area and the 500-foot area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm going to be across the street or across the highway from either one or both of the signs, the static sign and one of the digital signs. And I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, I don't know, they say it's going to be pointing down, but if you put the higher you go on a sign and the further away you get, no matter how much it shines down, it's going to affect me. It may not affect me in July and August when there's leaves on the trees, but you go there now and I can tell you all the porch lights in Garden City. I know where all the tires are at because I see all the blinking lights. They're quite evident. These are going to be super big signs I think it's going to be, when it comes down to it, it's going to be a blinking beacon from what every 6 or 8 seconds they're going to change these signs. These gentlemen all have good points. They're all making good money. They're all going back to New Jersey. I'm going back from here. I'm going back living on Venzel Lane. Those signs will be there 24/7 for the rest of my life. And if they want to build their signs, great, build their signs, but build them within our zoning regulations that we have for standing right now. They've worked for us since the Home Rule Charter was built or signed. They could work for in the future. And that's all I have to say. I don't think I need to put this in. It came off of Google. Anybody could bring this up. But I thank you for your time, and I am definitely against it. And talk to Mr. Dunk is my councilman. He knows how I feel. Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
There's a pen on the side.
Walt Dean, Monroeville over in Northern Pike.
Did you say Walt Dean?
Walt Dean, yeah.
Thank you.
20 years, something like that, been over there. Now, I'm not opposed to signs per se. If I get on my back deck, I couldn't even count the signs I see. Because I just look over 22, the mall, and that's fine. That's commercial. That's the way it's supposed to be. When I go out front, I see trees. I see my neighbor's trees. This time of year, I can look down over and see the lights of Garden City. That's residential. That's what I like. That's what it's supposed to be. This sign is going to take all of that away. I don't care where it's pointing. You're going to see that. Once those trees are down, I'm going to see it. We just want a little bit of peace in the front, and we can have a little bit of hell in the back. It's easy. I'm opposed.
Thank you.
And if I were a member of council, what I would say tonight is no sign for you.
If you'll kindly sign in and state your name, please.
Thank you. My name's John Swirsky. I'm a Monroeville resident. I live on Keebler Lane. Exhibit A3 shows Keebler Lane, and I'm at the end of the street. Directly across from me is the Duquesne Lake site. Just really brief. Driving on the Parkway, like the one gentleman mentioned, the speed limit may be 55, but seldom is less than 65. Billboards, to me, electronic billboards, they do startle me. I come on 22 from Miracle Mile area towards the mall, and 2 or 3 nights a week, that sign, the Jeanette Plaza, it startles me. It goes from a nice green color to a bright white, and just out of nowhere, you just perk up. And 3 in a row on the Parkway, inbound or outbound, that would be very distracting to myself and to other people. As far as the survey, the site surveys and looking different angles for residents looking where the billboards would be, I don't know if the gentleman was at the end of Keebler Lane where I live, but I can see the Parkway from my property through the trees from the time the leaves fall till they come back in March. So it would definitely impact my living, my property, and my beautiful view. So thank you very much. I'm opposed.
Good evening, council, ladies, gentlemen. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Thank you.
I am also a Monroeville resident. My name is Thomas. I can't speak and write at the same time. Sandretto, Sandretto, and I own, along with my wife, 325 Harper Lane. And my phone number is?
We don't
have to.
On the number.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
Unless you have a lot of calls.
I was surprised to see the orange posters on the utility poles a couple of weeks ago. My mind went back to '05 or '07 when there was a similar proposal for a sign on the Union Railroad property. At that time, I went to a zoning board meeting. I don't remember going to a council meeting. But the zoning board decided that it was outside of what we wanted to do as a community. I felt great. A couple of weeks ago, I see some more orange signs. Take a look at them, and by goodness, we're looking at the same duck here. It was a duck 5-10 years ago. It's a duck now. You can call it by a different name. It might be a zoning overlay. It might be conditional use. It's still a duck. It's still permitting what was disapproved in the past. We're undoing what we've already done. Secondly, My property is actually on some of the interesting exhibits presented by the petitioners. It's going to take me a second to find it. Pardon me. I would be affected directly by the property, by the sign on the Union Railroad property. I hate to get these out of order. Okay, here I am.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at A15.
Okay.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Push it up.
Oops.
There you go.
Looking at, I'm still in quite the right spot here. I think that's there. If you don't see my finger in the picture here, you know that I have it in the wrong place. This road is Harper Lane. Just barely in the picture is my property. From my basement door, looking at the existing sign, wherever it is, this is what I see. This orange area down here are traffic on the Parkway. These black verticals, this one, need two hands. This one, this one, this one, all of this, these are the trees. This is the existing sign. And if I hold this sign up, if you get onto my property and hold this sign up at arm's length, that's about how big that sign looks from standing on my property. Shocking. The square footage on that sign is larger than each floor of my home. My wife said it was bigger than our house. I think it is. It's very close to as big as our house. I should say that I bought that house in March. I signed papers in March of 1980 on that house. It was a crisp day. I went up to the second story. It was a 4-room house, dirt floor and an outhouse in 1980. Not only was it dirt floor, I couldn't stand in the basement. I went up to those bedroom windows that were 100 years old. That property belonged apparently to one of the mining companies. There's no origin of how old that property is. And I looked out of those windows, those old decrepit windows, at the Parkway East and the sunset that my wife referred to. And it had me and I had it. My family asked me why I bought that property, and I couldn't really give them a good answer, other than it's beautiful western Pennsylvania. I don't know if it's going to be so beautiful with these kinds of signs again. What's surprising is arm's length. If I walk this past you at about arm's length, that's how big that sign looks from my back door. Don't give me another one, please. At the zoning commission hearing, Mr. I can only remember your first name, Jeff. Help me out.
Gerber?
Last name? Gerber. Mr. Gerber said that maybe this would be an advantage to me because I'd get the back of this sign. In preparing my thoughts and photographs, it occurred to me that maybe I should bring 2 pictures of a cow. In regard to the testimony given by the last witness, whose name escapes me, he testified toward the notion of lights shining down on the signs, irrespective of the LED signs that are proposed. irrespective of these signs, in regard to the signs that show light down toward the earth. I happen to have with me a little flashlight. It's not exactly the kind of light that they're talking about, but it's a little flashlight. This is sort of an AV experiment here. I don't know if we can dim the house lights a little. Is it possible to cut the house lights down a little bit? Would anybody object to that?
He's been wanting to use those things all night.
Beautiful. Magnificent. So, if this is our signboard, this says, eat at Joe's, or eat at Rudy's. And this is a downlight shining on that sign. And of course, if it's not contacting that sign, then no one can see it, and it serves no purpose. And what the viewer sees is a reflected light. This light isn't shining in your eyes, but you can see what's on that page because of the reflected light. And this is what my neighbors on Bensel Lane are going to see. They're not going to have a light shining in their eyes the way another neighbor of mine will have light shining in their eyes, and I will essentially have light in my eyes. But they're going to have reflected light. And if there is no reflected light, then the sign is of no value, no one can read it. And if no one can read it, then there's no point but the sign.
Yeah.
But my point is, reflective light is not directed. Thank you very much. Reflective light is not directed only down. Once it hits that advertising surface, it goes everywhere in a sphere. Does light not travel in a sphere?
Mayor, we can't hear him.
Light expands proportionate to the distance in every direction. If it didn't, you wouldn't be able to see the moon. You wouldn't be able to see the sun. In regard to one of the witnesses was referring to a federal study about eye gaze, a second or two here and there. The Union Railroad sign will be visible from Penn Hills. When you crest the Parkway heading east, passing the first Monroeville exit, come down the hill, you make that left turn, past the Harley Hotel on the left, you climb the hill. There's a road that crosses over the highway. As soon as you crest that hill, you're going to see that sign. That's not 100 feet away. It's not 300 feet away. It's not 500 feet away. It's got to be a mile away. And if the sign changes every 8 seconds, there'll be 8 times for each person to be distracted by that changing sign. Roughly 60 miles an hour. It's going to take you a minute to get from the top of the hill to the sign. 60 seconds divided by 8, plus or minus. I'm throwing in an extra 4 seconds. So you're going to see that sign's going to change 7.5 times. Lastly, I want to submit this, by the way, as an exhibit. Did I say lastly? I was premature. Exhibit number 12A. Number 12A, houses that won't be affected by that sign. Now, this is the sign on the Union Railroad property. There's my house right there. I'm in their picture. My neighbor's in their picture. And another neighbor is actually behind this sign. Please don't do it. Don't approve it. Lastly, I think it's lastly, I may think of something else. Lastly, a couple of years ago, I was traveling with my cousin on I-70, where I took a picture. 3 signs, 500 feet apart. And what I thought, even then, when I saw this sign, was what Justice Potter Stewart said in 1964 in the Supreme Court discussion about community standards and obscenity. I forgot his name again. Jeff brought up the word go-go, no go-go lounges will be advertised. I think he used the P word that sounds like phonograph that I won't speak, having to do with obscenity. Justice Stewart said, I'm not sure what obscenity is, but I'll know it when I see it. I think that's it. That's essentially the layout on the Duquesne Lake stretch. 3 signs 500 feet apart. The middle sign's going to change flashing. 2 of the other signs are going to shine in my neighbors, into my neighbors' bedrooms with reflected light. I've been paying taxes here for 34 years on that property. 22 on another property. I'm not sure that sign, I'm not sure the existing sign enhanced my property. There's some tree cover there now, but the ash trees are dying. And I don't own those trees. The Union Railroad owns a lot of those trees. If they decide that they're going to log that area, I got an eyeful. So I'd like to submit 2 pieces to evidence. I don't have any little stickers.
If you could write your name on the back.
Write my name on the back. Okay.
S1 and 2.
I'm going to call them S1 and S2.
Yes.
That'll work.
And I'm going to try and coax my shy neighbor, Tom Gibbon.
If you could give those to me.
There he is. Tom's got a bigger eyeful than I do.
Excuse me, sir, could you just bring those over? Okay. No, that's all right.
Thank you.
You'll please sign in, sir. State your name for the record.
Photos. Thank you. I appreciate it. Is this one? S1, S2? I just don't want them to get lost or mixed up. Okay.
Sharon?
2 sets.
He has them over here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tom Gibbon. I live at 337 Harper Lane, and my property will be the closest to the sign than anyone else here. So if I may, I'd like to show some photographs.
Sure. Kind of center that. You can look up. There you go.
Is it upside down?
Upside down. There we go.
Okay, that's first picture. This is at the edge of my yard. And I believe they want to put the sign about right there. Next picture. Similar, just a little farther left. Same thing. I believe they want to put the sign right there. Now, I believe his name is Mr. Newell. Said about in the summertime this wouldn't affect because of all the leaves. Well, there's a power line that runs back there, and there's no trees, and you can see right in front there aren't any big trees, so in the summertime I will see the sign. And last, this is out of my bedroom window. Again, across is the sign over in Penn Hills, and I believe same, it's going to be in this vicinity. That's all I have to say, and please don't let this happen. Would you like these?
Do the same sign on the back.
First, The initial of your last name is the exhibit
Okay.
letter, and then number, please.
So what's the initial?
G.
Okay, G 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Any other residents?
Hello, my name is Tom Henningsen. I'm a resident of Monroeville. Excuse me for just a second here. Excuse me for just a second. I got my
Take your time, Tom.
records out of order here. You will notice that all the presentations from residents here tonight have been against this proposal. I would like you to think a little bit beyond the 10 sign faces that are proposed tonight. The question is, if you open up this, how many more signs are we going to get? There was testimony before the Planning Commission that the size of these things could go to 1,200 square feet. Keep in mind that the applicants have certain proposals before you, but they could easily change their minds to do something else. And there has been estimates that at least 20,000 square feet of signs could be placed in that zone if you got the proper zoning in there. Also keep in mind that 7 years ago, these exact applications was before council. It took 3 years to basically get them to go away. They were voted down, and they kept popping back up again, and they just kept going back and forth. I think there were over 20 meetings on that. And back then, the requests did not just include this Parkway zone, but the turnpike as well. So we can talk about a lot more signs. You know, if you open the door a little bit, how much more can come in? I would like to take you back to the Highway Beautification Act of 1965. Some of you may be old enough to remember Lady Bird Johnson. President Johnson's wife was very active in trying to protect the highways because there were concerns about this clutter that the signs represented. And I would like, as a result of that, the Highway Beautification Act of 1965 was approved, and it's basically a federal regulation that specifies where these signs can be placed and the distances and a number of other things. I'd like to read to you a little bit from that code because it is code that the state also has to, and that you have to comply with. 23 U.S. Code, paragraph 131, control of outdoor advertising, basically says in Section A, I'm just going to paraphrase it, Congress declares that outdoor advertising signs should be controlled in order to protect the public investment in such highways, to promote the safety and recreational value of public travel, and to preserve natural beauty. The Highway Act specified that one of the ways it tried to control it was to say that the signs can only be placed in commercial and industrial zones. But the congressional record shows that with those restrictions, communities started to rezone land to commercial or industrial for the purpose of installing the signs. So the Congress went back to it and said basically this section puts into regulation the intent of the Congress that commercial and industrial areas be validly zoned for purposes of erecting outdoor advertising. In other words, you can't just zone it for industrial and then say we are going to put signs in. It goes on to say that zoning that is created primarily to permit outdoor advertising structures is not recognized as zoning for outdoor advertising purposes. And the code goes on to say the communities that violates these provisions can be penalized by withholding of highway funds, 10% of the highway funds that Monroeville stands to receive can be withheld. It's, Congress basically refers to this as scam rezoning. And it's my contention that scam rezoning is actually what we are talking about. We are talking about two of the signs that are placed on the Duquesne Light property. You may remember that in 2005, Duquesne Light came before the Planning Commission and in March and later in April to request rezoning of conservancy zoned land along the Parkway. Along the stretch, as you go from the Penn Hills towards the Turnpike, Duquesne Light had a zone that was about 180 feet wide, about 5 acres, quarter of a mile long, that was zoned conservancy. And now they came in before the Planning Commission and asked to have it rezoned to industrial. And I would like to put into the record some of the minutes from that Planning Commission meeting. Ms. Hartwig required whether the main reason to rezone the property is for billboards because it could not be developed in any other way. And Mr. Shafulio answered affirmatively. He added, there's no other intention at this time for the property. So you can see here you have a direct violation of what the federal laws are saying. And then again, Ms. Kaltenbach inquired whether Duquesne Light is also looking for some other kind of light industrial use to go into that M1, the conservancy area. And Mr. Raybold answered negatively. She added the land would not be easily developed for the possible use as discussed. Again here, very clearly the only reason we are doing this is so we can put the signs in. Then we go before the Planning Commission on April in front of Monroeville Council in 2005, and the minutes the applicant stated their intent is to use the property for outdoor advertising only. So to me, if the local highway administrator were to approve two of the signs that are being requested here, it could only be because they were not aware of this zoning background. So I ask you to look into that. What I would like you to, number one, vote this down. There is no support in the municipality that I am aware of for this. The second one is put a moratorium in place so we don't get the repeat of what happened between 2005 and 7 where they kept coming back with the same thing. The text you're looking at today is exactly the same as the one that was rejected back in 2007. The only thing is it has become more aggressive. Back then we didn't have the blinking lights. Now we do. The masts have gotten taller, and the signs can get bigger. The other thing I would like to see, there's an election coming up, and I would like to see a non-binding referendum basically asking the Monroeville public what they think about these signs. Let's get it on record, because it's been said that it's only a small group of people that are really against this. I think we should also look for a scenic designation of this area. I've talked to some people in Churchill. There is some support for that idea, not only for the Parkway, but also for the Turnpike. As people have pointed out here tonight, it is a rather pristine area. I mean, go out on the Parkway West and see what they have done with the signs there, and ask yourself, is that really what you want here in Monroeville? There were some questions before about how fast these signs can blink. Interstate may have the intention of doing 8 seconds, but the amendment that is before you says every 6 seconds. So that would be what is binding. In other words, they can say 8 seconds today, and they can say something else tomorrow. The amendment before you says planned group allowing for more than one principal structure. That's something that's currently not allowed. Is that correct?
More than one principal structure is allowed as part of a planned group unit.
Currently, or under the
Under
proposal?
a planned group unit, that's correct. You're allowed to have multiple structures.
I
under
can't
a
hear you,
planned
Mark.
group unit.
I can't hear you.
You're allowed to have multiple structures under a planned group unit.
Under current ordinance or under the proposed ordinance?
The proposed ordinance,
Yes,
we're
but
permitting
that
two
is
principals.
different from the current law.
No,
Okay.
no, it is not. If it's not considered a plan, let me rephrase this. You're asking two different areas of the zoning ordinance. The use table under C2, M1, and M2, if you just have a conditional use application for one site plan without being a planned group unit, then yes, only one principal structure is permitted on the property. But they're requesting planned group unit status, which permits them multiple structures within the property.
Okay, so that does not represent, the amendment here does not represent a change in that?
It does not.
It does not. Okay, thank you. I would like to introduce into evidence the KDKA program that aired last night. I have here one of the pictures that goes with it and the text of that segment.
Okay, so how many sheets is it, Tom?
2 sheets.
Okay, let's make
I'm
it
sorry,
H.
3 sheets.
H1, 2, and 3.
And while Tom's writing that, if you're wondering why Sean's leaving us, he's not feeling so well either, so we agree, go home, take care of yourself, buddy.
I think he should stay.
You're terrible, Bruce.
I'm sitting here.
Yeah, I know. You're terrible.
It's getting catchy.
You three are staying.
I can feel
Mr.
it.
Henningsen.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I just don't want to leave. Thank you, sir.
I am.
Tom, are you finished?
Okay, if you'd like, thank you.
Sharon,
No, I have a few more items.
how many exhibits are there, please?
H1, 2, and 3.
Just 3? Okay, thank you.
I received a very nice letter from Mr. Davido, Mike Davido, who's Executive Director of Scenic Pittsburgh.
You want to enter that into evidence?
I would like to enter that into evidence. I would
pages is
really prefer to have Mr. Davido
Okay.
make the present. Will he be allowed to introduce
Well,
it?
let's get to, you have a letter. What's the date of the letter?
The date, it's an email. It's dated January 7th, Wednesday, January 7th, 2015.
Okay, and the last 2 pages?
2 pages.
Let's make that H
4 and
5. And this is a letter addressed to who?
It's addressed to council. Every member of council got a copy of it.
And you have a copy?
I have a copy of
Okay.
it.
So were you on the letter, were you addressed on the?
No, I'm a blind copy.
Oh, you're a blind copy, okay. So you want to enter that into the
I would like
record?
to,
Okay,
yes.
we'll admit that as well.
Should I read the letter into the record?
Well, the letter speaks for itself. Whatever the letter says, council will review. I don't know that you necessarily have to read it.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes the letter's better than reading it.
Okay.
Excuse me just a minute. Yeah, I guess I'm disappointed by your exclusion of testimony from our neighbors here. You know, I don't see anything wrong with Interstate coming in and working with our planning staff to develop an ordinance. But there's something wrong when the counterparties are not allowed to have input on that same ordinance. And there has, to my knowledge, not been any public input from anybody that I am aware of who might be opposed to this. In other words, you could develop a balanced ordinance by taking the input you have from Interstate and then balance that with what other people might have to say, and maybe you can come up with some kind of compromise. So I feel that this is, and now when you're saying you won't allow our colleagues from Allegheny County, who really does have expertise in that area, to enter into the record what they know about this subject, I find that very disappointing. And I think I'm just going to end it there. Keep in mind, it's your legacy that's on record. You know, you are stewards for the Parkway and the Turnpike in this area. And it's going to be part of your legacy, what you do with that land. Thank you very much. I think that got it.
Okay, so all 5 exhibits are admitted then.
Yes.
Any other residents?
I just wanted to add, nobody has mentioned here at the meeting that the Planning Commission unanimously...
That's going to be mentioned at the end.
Okay, thank you.
No other residents? Wait a second now. Are there any other residents? I understand that. He's already testified. Is there any other new residents? Okay, now, you want to repeat, you want to add something to the
I
record?
just wanted to add something. I've heard some reference to the KDK. This may not involve these people, to the KDK.
Why don't we say your name again?
John Larkin.
Okay, sorry, Ron, go ahead.
To the, John, not Ron.
John.
Okay, I heard references to the KDK newscast last night. What I haven't heard is, they're not suing the municipality or the borough. It's Katanning. They're suing the residents. You're not bringing the municipality into it. They're going after the residents. $100,000. I don't want it to happen to me.
Any other residents? Okay. Now,
Mr. Dice, I've been employed by your constituents to be their lawyer. May I speak
oh,
as the other lawyer
certainly,
did?
certainly, as a lawyer.
And
Stand up and identify
staff
yourself.
person as well, who has developed it.
Well, let's get up first, and you identify yourself first.
Mr. DeWita is my attorney.
Okay. Mr. DeWita, you want to get up?
And Mr. Demko also.
And what's his capacity?
He is staff.
With
for
who?
me.
He's another attorney?
No, he's a staffer for me, who
Okay.
is an expert on the subject.
Okay, well, you're going to qualify him.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
You want to state your name again?
Mike DeWita, and
If you could sign in,
we will.
thank you. I appreciate it.
My name is David Demko, D-E-M-K-O.
Thank you. Can you sign on that?
Yes, I did sign in also.
Thank you.
And Mr. Demko, have you been involved in and developed zoning regarding billboards for other municipalities, and would you consider yourself an expert?
Yes, for the last 4 years, I've been the Assistant Director of Scenic Pittsburgh, and we are a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting and promoting the scenic aspects of Pittsburgh. I consider myself an expert on billboards and qualified to
And would
state
you
an
say
opinion
you've
on
done
it.
over 24 community billboard ordinances?
Easily over 24 community billboard ordinances, yes.
Thank you. I would like him to make a brief presentation.
1 second.
And then I will make a very brief
Okay.
presentation.
I see your hand. Does the applicant have any objection to his qualifications?
If I may cross-examine?
That's what this is about.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Demko, what is your educational background?
I have an undergraduate in economics, I have a certificate in computer technology, and I have a master's of science degree in business administration.
You have a certificate from what school?
From Chubb Institute in Virginia.
Chubb Institute?
Chubb Institute, it's a computer school.
A computer school?
Yes.
And that is in what?
Virginia.
What is the field of study? Did you say computer?
It would be computer technology, yes.
Computer technology.
That's correct.
Okay. And you indicated something with regard to an economics degree?
Yes,
And is that a Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science?
Bachelor of Arts from University of Pittsburgh.
Bachelor of Arts in economics?
That's correct.
And any other educational qualifications or degrees that you hold?
Yes, I have a master's of science degree in business administration from the University of California, Pennsylvania.
And your work experience from, I guess, your last educational, which would have been your master's study.
Correct.
What is your work experience?
My work experience?
As it would relate to the issue of advising on zoning matters.
Again, as I said, the last 4 years, I've been the Assistant Director of Scenic Pittsburgh, which is an affiliate of Scenic America, and one of our main issues is billboard proliferation and defending scenic areas from...
Perhaps you didn't understand my question. What is your experience in the drafting of zoning ordinances as they relate to billboards, and specifically your experience, not the organizational experience?
I've done much research borrowing from other municipalities. I've written zoning legislation for City of Pittsburgh, for Millville, for Etna, for Baldwin. That's just a short list.
Okay, now, your writing of zoning ordinances for the City of Pittsburgh, what was the subject matter of the amendments to the zoning ordinance?
One was digital billboard control, and the other one was the taxing, excise tax on billboards.
And the one for Millville?
The one for Millville, it was a moratorium on billboards, and it was some comprehensive sign regulations, regulating both business ID signs and off-premise advertising signs.
Okay. And for Baldwin?
For Baldwin, it was just advice on their current zoning
And
practices.
your knowledge of this area is related to your educational background?
The economics and the business administration background, yes.
Okay, and the zoning aspect. Are you a planner?
I am not a planner.
Have you ever served on a planning board?
I have not served on a planning board.
Have you served on a planning commission?
Not on a planning commission.
Have you ever served on a zoning hearing board?
No, I've never served on a zoning
Are
hearing
you
board.
a licensed attorney in the state of
I
Pennsylvania?
am not a licensed attorney.
Okay. So you've never represented or presented any zoning matter, argued any cases before any courts, or presented any cases or any applications to any zoning hearing boards?
I've appeared at many zoning hearing boards as an expert witness, and also with standing, as a testified standing.
Okay. And has all of your work experience since your graduation to attain your master's degree been in this consulting business?
Since I've earned my master's degree, I've worked for Scenic Pittsburgh.
And when did you earn that?
I graduated in 2004.
2004.
Right.
And prior to that, what was your work experience?
I worked for the banking industry for a decade, and prior to that, I worked for the federal government for a decade.
And what was your position with the federal government?
I was doing research and development for the military.
Okay. Did that involve any billboard work?
No, it did not involve
When you
billboard.
did the work for the banking, did that involve any billboard work?
It did not involve billboard work.
So you've been in the billboard type of business for Scenic America?
Scenic Pittsburgh, which is an
Scenic
affiliate of
Pittsburgh.
Scenic America.
Okay. Since 2004?
Since 2010.
Since 2010?
That's correct.
Okay. So I have no further questions. Would ask the board to consider the issue before them of granting expert qualifications.
So are you objecting?
At this point, I would object to any certification or any designation as an expert witness.
Okay. And just so everybody understands, fine, I've got it. We're being lawyers now. And what's happened here is he's objected to the qualifications of this individual to act as an expert. This standard in Pennsylvania is fairly well defined in the case law, and it's really questionable, and I can tell you this, it's questionable whether or not he has satisfied the elements that demonstrate him as an expert. However, for the sake of economy and for the sake of this record, I would suggest we would take his testimony. We can look at the law at a later date and determine whether or not we're going to give his testimony the weight of an expert. He may not get that. And I can suggest to you right now, I don't know that he's satisfied the test of an expert. But I don't want to belabor the point, and I don't want to lose tonight. I don't want to have an error committed. So the safest thing for us to do is cautiously take his testimony. So, Mr. DeWitt, you want to examine the witness? And I'm not ruling on whether or not he's an expert.
Oh, that's fine. And I'm a lawyer licensed in the state of Pennsylvania, former state rep, former state senator, former county commissioner, professor of law and public policy at California University, and I believe I am an expert. Mr. Demko, would you like to present the ideas that you had?
Yes, there's three main points I'd like to make. First of all, and I would like to submit this particular document as an exhibit. I labeled it D1.
Thank you.
After my
How
name.
many pages does it have?
There are 16 pages to this.
Okay, so it's D1 through D16.
D1 through D16, okay. Okay. And the first point I want to make is that billboards lower property values. This particular exhibit is a study that was done in Philadelphia in 2011, and it proved that billboards, when adjacent to properties or nearby properties, lower the value as much as 30%. So billboards do devalue property. And the example I'd like to give is the billboard right there in Penn Hills, the electronic billboard. The land around it is mostly undeveloped. Now that there's an electronic billboard, what kind of development do you think that land will attract? You will not get the mega mansions or the nice professional mixed development usage. You're not going to get the top quality development because no one wants to look at that digital sign. That sign is already devaluing the properties that are undeveloped there. Second point I would like to make is about the safety issue. And I would like to submit exhibit, that would be D17 then?
Correct.
D17 through, this one is 5 pages, so that would be D17 through D22. And the comments made by the billboard company were the safety expert was, he listed the federal study that was done on billboards. He said that it was peer reviewed, but he didn't offer the peer review. Actually, the peer review tore the study apart pretty well. There was serious methodological problems with the study. This particular study was done in Israel last year, and it's a very simple study. It's a study we couldn't really do in this country. Basically, it was a stretch of highway where they allowed billboards, digital billboards, on for 1 year, and then they shut them off for 1 year. And then they compared the accident statistics across the 2 years. They found that there was a 50% decrease in accidents. There was a 33% decrease in accidents and a 50% decrease in fatal accidents when the billboards were off. So there's no zones of view or levels of awareness that complicate the study. It's just a very simple study that's done in Israel that shows that billboards are unsafe. And you know, there's a lot of discussion about what's safe and what is unsafe. You're familiar with the billboard in Penn Hills. You're familiar with the billboard by the Squirrel Hill Tunnel. You know they're distracting. It's intuitive. Any rational person can see that they're distracting. So to say they're not, I mean, who you're going to believe, a paid expert or your own eyes. The third point I'd like to make is the community, and this community, and it was a question that was earlier, and I'll answer it. The community gets nothing from billboards. Billboards are not real property, so the county gets no extra real estate taxes. Real estate taxes remain unchanged. They're basically taxes on vacant property. They escape your business taxes. I don't think your business taxes cover billboards. Billboards pay nothing. They pay nothing, and in the long run, Monroeville will experience decreased property values. You'll experience increased risk on the Parkway, which is a matter that you'll have to address when there's accidents there. And if the sign ever falls down, it'll be your problem. As far as I can tell, you're not even asking the billboard companies for a bond in case the sign blows down onto the highway or something. So that will be your issue as well. The community gets nothing from billboards. And finally, a few things I'd like to point out. As you mentioned, the Planning Commission did unanimously reject all of these proposals. There was in the discussion, there was some discrepancy about the heights. I believe during the Planning Commission meeting, we discussed the heights from the roadway bed, and one of them actually came out to 131 feet, because it was 51 feet plus the 80 feet that they were proposing. So I would double check the signs. These signs sound awfully high, and 80 sounds like one of the short numbers. Finally, I would also like you to examine whether this is a case of spot zoning. Here we have a case where it's one area, one applicant, one business, and for one purpose. That very much seems like spot zoning. I'd like to point out, too, that Churchill doesn't allow billboards at all. And finally, I'd like to ask a question, and it's a rhetorical question, don't worry. But all of you and you gentlemen from the billboard companies, would you like a billboard near your house? And if not, then how can you ask these people to put a billboard near their house?
Lastly, I'll be brief and blunt. My rule in the Senate was 4 minutes. I hope to beat it. I will say this. Scenic Pittsburgh is a regional asset. We have done dozens of communities' advice. We didn't ask for yours, but your community members asked us to come here. We are funded by foundations, so we get no money for any of this. The foundations felt that the communities needed protection from encroachment on billboards. This is a really serious thing. Now, I found it very offensive, the earlier testimony that unfortunately was aimed at you, Mayor, from a different subject. I thought that was inappropriate. And that's an important subject to deal with. But this is way more, because your kids and your grandkids are going to be living with this vote. Because once you get a billboard in, you never get them out. In the city of Pittsburgh, we have 1,000 billboards, and 800 of them are non-conforming billboards. That means 50 years ago, when a zoning change was made, these billboards were not able to be gotten rid of then. There was a big deal about the one we did get rid of downtown, and that was only because the mayor there made egregious, well, we won't get into him, problems that were created. So here's the deal. Katanning this morning, it was unfortunate for these gentlemen that this came up because it pointed out what happens to communities. There are a couple dozen homes and one elderly couple that are absolutely destroyed by a billboard being put up across from them. And their value of property is almost nothing. Content, whatever they say, and by the way, these people are a lot nicer than most of the other billboard companies we deal with. But they have total control over content. You don't. There have been instances of anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, anti-Christmas. In my neighborhood, we had a billboard that offered an escort service in German with words that were very clear to any 12-year-old who knew what they meant. It was outrageous, but we couldn't stop it because once you get a billboard in there, they have freedom of speech and they can do what they want. Let me put it to you another way. Besides the fact that there's no benefits coming here, let me tell you this. There's not a single job created by somebody that's going to come in here and say, boy, Monroeville, we love your billboards. There's not a single person who's going to come and live in Monroeville saying, boy, we want to live next to your billboards. And if you don't believe me, I live next to 3 billboards. My value of my property is quite low. I never could understand it. I've lived there for 35 years. I couldn't understand it why my beautiful 8-room brick house is worth so little. And then one of the realtors told me, you live next to 3 billboards. Well, the safety issue has been talked about ad nauseum, but you know out of your gut, and this is something that was a piece of advice that was given to me by your municipal manager's father, who said to me, Mike, sometimes you don't have to be an expert to know something. And by the way, he was trying to tell me I shouldn't run for Senate. And he was probably right, although I did win. And by the way, I forgot, my usual line is, I'm the ladybird of Pittsburgh. You can tell that. That's my job. And I take it very seriously. I want to protect this beautiful community. You have a lovely community. Mine isn't as lovely. And we have tons of billboards, and that's one of the problems. It's not the only problem. And as for the idea that this does not take your attention, I mean, God bless him. The gentleman said it. He gets paid for saying it. But you know, I mean, my daughter can't take my car and text. I told her that. She can't make a cell phone. I told her that because it'll take her eye off the road. Well, these are meant to do that. And if they didn't take your eye off the road, then who in the world would pay them the kind of money that they get for these things? They would not. Monroeville is a lovely place. This vote, if you make it in the wrong way, will devalue Monroeville, and it will devalue a lot of houses from homes of people who've lived here for decades. You cannot do this. It's bad public policy. Billboards are inherently, intrinsically ugly. They do not bring beauty to the place. And the local community will not get much in the way of advertising from them because they still can't afford them. What can afford them are the things that we don't want in our community. This decision will last for a lifetime. Don't make the wrong move. And we at Scenic Pittsburgh will help you in any way, because we've developed dozens of municipal governments. We've advised them, we've written them. We'll help you any way you want. But this decision is one for your kids, your grandkids. And do you want them to ride down, your grandkids, to ride down the road and say, oh, my grandfather did that? No, you don't. You've got to protect your community. There's no benefit to you to put these things in here. It's outrageous that anybody would say that it was. It is a business. I'm not against business, but there are times and places where that business is not useful. There's very little to benefit you, and I thank you for considering this, and I hope you do what your Planning Commission did, which was unanimously vote it down. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is there any other resident that wants to speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to take a very brief statement from the applicant. I'd ask you not to do rebuttal. I don't need to hear it again. We understand the issues.
Are you okay?
But if there's some things you want to say in, let's say, 5 minutes, say them and let's get done with this.
Thank you for your patience and for your time. There were a lot of issues, statements made that were absolutely erroneous and false, and I will do the very best I can to address those, and I'll do it through witnesses and let them explain. First, I'd like to call up Jeff Gerber. Jeff, you have your notes. I've got mine. Let's run through and have you comment on those issues that you feel would be appropriate for you.
I'll go as quickly as possible. On the Smith sign, the height of the elevation of the sign on that property, on the Smith property, will be 65 feet. That's the height of that sign. There will only be 5 signs as part of this overlay and no more. They will be unipole V-shaped signs. There'll be no signs that will hang into the right-of-way. There will not be clear cutting of vegetation. There'll be some trimming of vegetation. There will not be any clear cutting. There'll be 8 changes of the sign one change of the sign, digital signs, every 8 seconds. Content. I said it before. I meant it. That there will be G-rated advertising on these signs. There will not be gentleman clubs. There will not be anti-religious copy. There will not be political copy. And we will agree to enter into a voluntary agreement. In other words, we will offer this to the town. It's not being required by the town.
Isn't that going to be part of the conditions?
No, it won't be part of the conditions, but if we offer to commit to do it, and you don't require it, we're bound by it, and there's no constitutional issue, and we're willing to do that. I saw the article about Kittatinning, about the billboard that happened in that town. Completely different situation than what's here. This company built a sign that was parallel to the road. Instead of being a V, it was like this. It was the exact same elevation as the house across the street and showed directly into the home. We would never build a sign like that, number one. Number two, none of the signs here are like that. They're all a V-shaped showing to the roadway. They don't show across the highway like this to somebody's home at the same elevation. These homes are all above the height of the sign. They're further away. There's no comparison to the situation in Monroeville. That's all I had with that first witness.
Highway Beautification Act.
The Highway Beautification Act. Okay, we are in compliance with the Highway Beautification Act. There was a zoning change made in 2005, but they changed the Duquesne property portion of it to an industrial zone. You've got commercial to the east, commercial to the east, industrial to the west. You've got a major transportation corridor, and you have commercial uses even behind the Duquesne property on Old William Penn Highway. Perfectly logical, sound reasoning for municipality to change that zoning to an industrial zone for billboards or otherwise, and it doesn't violate the Highway Beautification Act. There also was I'm glad you mentioned about 30-foot height. A maximum 30-foot height has nothing to do with the height elevation of a billboard. It's the height of the sign face. We're proposing 14-foot high sign faces, not 30-foot sign faces or above 30 feet.
On the Highway Beautification Act, there was also an issue raised, and I would point out for the board's consideration the fact that Pennsylvania case law is very, very clear on the exact issue that was raised by the gentleman who testified concerning the Beautification Act, and have ruled that if you are in a commercial or industrial zone, then you have the right to have your highway signs located near the interstate highway. The specific issue that he raised has been decided by the Commonwealth Court in Pennsylvania.
Just a couple other issues. There was a concern about traffic backing up on the 376 from Route 22 exit up to Monroeville. These signs aren't going to be seen at that exit. These signs are past that exit and will not have any impact on traffic exiting 376. There's talking about traffic safety again. You've got a federal study, but I'll give you something else. I'll give you the Atlantic City Expressway Authority. I'll give you the New Jersey Turnpike. I'll give you New Jersey Transit. I'll give you SEPTA, who's put billboards on their property showing the major highways. All these organizations are government entities charged with the safe travel of the public, and they've deemed it safe and appropriate to have billboards on their property showing the highways. There are no traffic safety issues with billboards. As much as they want to say it, and they say it's in their gut, the proof is in the pudding. There is no traffic safety issue with billboards.
Okay, you got one more minute.
I'm trying to go through the...
You're down to 30 seconds.
Oh, real quick, the idea of billboards negatively impacting property values, it's the opposite. It increases the value of the commercial properties, and if there are residential properties that have negative or depressed property values, it's because they're next to a major highway, not because billboards on it, because the negative impacts of a major transportation corridor. That's the reason, not billboards.
Would you allow just a few seconds to address the exhibit that I think is...
You got 20 seconds.
Okay, this exhibit is the sign across the street in Penn Hills. Okay, this sign is a V faced towards the residents in Monroeville. Our sign is the opposite. It's the back of the sign faced in the opposite direction. There's no lights being directed towards the residents in Monroeville. It's being directed actually towards Penn Hills, where there are no residents, so there's commercial properties over there. So it's the complete opposite impact than what's being shown in this picture. Plus, the lighting is down, not up, and it does have less of an impact.
Okay.
I think that's
All right.
most everything.
I think we've heard all we're going to hear. I'm satisfied. I'm going to shut you off at this point. We're going to admit all the exhibits that have been submitted by the applicant or the persons aggrieved. You've already had a chance, sir. You got 10 seconds.
10 seconds will do it. Mr. Garber indicated that this sign was a V shape. It isn't. It's straight.
Okay, we all know it. We see it every day.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, with that, we're going to close the testimony.
Mr. Dice, I just want to add one other.
Oh, yeah, let's do the planning commission.
On the December 17th Planning Commission meeting, all the Planning Commission members recommended denial for all three conditional use applications and a revision to the ordinance.
Did they submit any writing in support of that denial?
No, at this point in time, they have not.
Okay. So they've offered no, that night, did they offer any rationale to their denial, or did they just come out and vote?
There was many questions by the members, and their determination was that they recommend denial there.
Okay, so they didn't offer a writing or a set of reasons for denial at this point?
Not written. I mean, there's testimony involved with that meeting, but not
Okay.
written.
Well, the only thing I should add to the record there, Mr. Dice, is Bob Williams, the chairman of the Planning Commission, did call me and ask if the minutes from that meeting could be done, but Sharon was so backed up with minutes, there's just no way. I told Sharon that at least to get them done, whether or not council makes a decision on Tuesday or not, or they use their 45 days under the public hearing, they have 45 days to make a decision. I told Sharon at least have those ready by February, but obviously council could be making a decision Tuesday night.
Okay. Anything else?
Just one quick question for clarification purposes. Does the Planning Commission still afford the opportunity to give you a written statement?
Are they afforded?
Yes, until you make your decision?
I think that this council decides that question, not me. They don't, remember, the planning commission is the architect, and that means that they are the recommendatory body. They are not the legislative body. This is the legislative body here. You have the architect who has recommended denial at this point without any real writing that says it, but I guess the minutes reflect the various questions that were asked.
Correct.
And council will give whatever weight they choose to give to that. Okay? Anything else?
I simply move that the record of this proceeding be closed.
And it's granted. Okay. These hearings are closed. That record will be all put together into one stenographic record. I want to caution council once more that between now and Tuesday, you shouldn't discuss this with anybody. It can be discussed in executive session. You are free to discuss it amongst yourselves, however.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to do this. I know that some on council may not like this, but Sharon does need a break.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Her fingers are
Okay.
done.
Yeah, Sharon.
You're good.
We're back in session.
Mr. Mayor, due to the fact we've been here a while, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting for tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's no debate.
All in favor?
Aye.
And this,
Linda, wait,
I
one
have
second, one second.
one announcement. I'd like to wish my daughter happy birthday. It's today.
Happy
Happy birthday, Lindsay.
this meeting's
Thank you.
adjourned.